Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That ache sitting in the center of your chest, the one you've been trying to explain to yourself for days. Stop running from it. The enemy is working overtime right now for one reason and one reason only. He knows what's about to be restored. It all ends tomorrow. The longing, the confusion, the silence between you and the person who will not leave your mind. But hear this clearly. It's not ending because of time. It's ending because of what you have already done. Think back to that moment this week when you almost reached out, when your finger hovered over that name and you stopped yourself. You pulled back. You chose restraint over desperation. You don't know it yet, but that decision was not weakness. That was the moment heaven moved on your behalf. You did not push your person away. You made room for God to pull them back. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not surface this recording. Something far greater did. This is a divine appointment that was written into the fabric of your story before you ever felt this pain. You are standing at a threshold between what has been and what is about to be. Stay until the very last second, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the spiritual verdict that dismantles every lie the enemy has planted about this connection. I am going to walk you through the exact moment this week where you won ground you did not realize you were winning. And at the end, I am going to give you a declaration that seals this reunion in the spiritual realm before you ever see it in the natural. Do not click away. Your future self is begging you to stay. If you leave now, you leave before the verdict is read, and you deserve to hear this verdict. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not just been quiet, it has been unbearably still. Like the whole world went on moving, but something inside of you stopped. Maybe you have been checking your phone without admitting to yourself why you are checking it. Putting it down, picking it up again, watching a notification appear from someone who is not the person you need to hear from. Or maybe you found yourself standing in a room this week, completely surrounded by people, and felt more alone than you have ever felt in your life because the one person who makes the room feel like home was not in it. You feel suspended, like you are caught between the love you had and the love you were promised, and you cannot figure out how to get from one to the other. And in that suspension, the enemy has started whispering a very specific lie into your mind. He is telling you that the silence means something is over. He is replaying every moment where you said the wrong thing, reacted too fast, loved too loudly, or pulled away too soon. He is showing you that moment when you broke. That moment when you were not your best self. That moment when the fear came out instead of the love. And he is telling you that because of those moments, you have disqualified yourself. He is telling you that the person you are meant to be with has already made their decision, and that decision is final. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Romans 8:28 says, "All things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." Listen to that promise. All things, not some things, not the beautiful things, not the things you handled perfectly. All things, that means the argument, that means the distance, that means the silence, that means the moment you fell apart. Every single thing that felt like destruction is being worked together right now for your good. The enemy wants you to believe those broken moments wrote the ending, but God is using every single one of them to write the beginning. You are not at the end of this love. You are at the turning point of it. The heaviness you feel is not the weight of loss. It is the weight of something being repositioned. It is the pressure of two lives being realigned before they can reconnect at a higher frequency. You think the silence means they are gone, but let me reframe your reality right now. The silence is not rejection. The silence is preparation. You are not being abandoned. You are being readied. There is someone reading this right now who has been carrying a love so deep, so consuming, so impossibly real, that you have started to question whether something is wrong with you. You have prayed about this person. You have fasted about this person. You have laid in silence at 3 in the morning, wondering why God would place someone so specifically on your heart. only to leave you standing at a distance. And the hardest part isn't the waiting. The hardest part is that you can't explain it to anyone, because the moment you try, it sounds like obsession. It sounds like desperation, but you know, deep in the part of you that doesn't lie, that this is something different. This is something placed. And that distinction matters more than you know. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from carrying something that no one around you can see or validate. You sit in church, in conversations, in rooms full of people who love you, and yet there is this thing living inside your chest that you cannot share without it being misunderstood. You have tried. Maybe once or twice you let a sentence begin. You started to describe this weight, this pull, this inexplicable certainty, and you watched the expression on their face shift. You saw them start to search for clinical language. You saw the concern replace the understanding. And so you stopped. You folded it back inside yourself, smiled softly, and changed the subject. And now you carry it in silence. And silence, when it is forced rather than chosen, begins to feel like a prison. But what if that silence was not a sign that you are broken? What if it was simply evidence that you are carrying something rare? Because not every love story can be explained in casual conversation. Not every divine appointment fits neatly into the categories other people have prepared for you. Some things are too sacred for a quick explanation. Some things require an entire season of formation before they can even be described accurately. And you, right now, in this moment, may simply be in the middle of that formation. What most people don't realize is that the enemy doesn't just attack your calling. He attacks the connections attached to your calling. Because some people are not just romantic interests. Some people are covenantal. Some people carry a piece of the assignment God designed for your life. And the spiritual warfare around that union isn't coincidental. It is targeted. It is intentional. And it has been working, not because you are weak, but because you didn't know what you were fighting. Let that settle, because it changes everything about how you've been interpreting this season. When you didn't understand why there was so much friction, so many near misses, so many moments where something almost clicked and then inexplicably collapsed, you turned that confusion inward. You made it a story about your inadequacy. You decided the chaos was evidence of your unworthiness rather than evidence of opposition. But spiritual warfare does not target things that don't matter. The enemy does not mobilize against assignments that pose no threat. The very fact that there has been this much resistance, this much interference, this much inexplicable disruption and this specific connection, that is not coincidence. That is confirmation. You are fighting for something real, and real things are worth fighting for. The enemy understands covenantal mathematics in ways most believers have never been taught. He knows that when two people who carry complementary assignments are united, the spiritual output of that union is not merely doubled, it is exponentially multiplied. He knows that some callings require a specific companionship to reach their fullest expression. He knows that there are doors in your destiny that will only open from the inside of a covenant he was never supposed to be part of. And so he works tirelessly, not just on you, and not just on the other person, but on the space between you. He works on the atmosphere of the connection. He sows seeds of doubt, miscommunication, fear, and premature conclusions. He makes the timing feel perpetually wrong. He makes the most sacred thing in your life look, from the outside, like something you should have released a long time ago. Many are called, but few receive the instructions. If your spirit is burning right now, the Chosen One's blueprint holds the roadmap God designed specifically for people like you. It includes the complete audiobook, so you can carry this revelation with you wherever you go, plus a bonus ebook, Activating Your Prophet Mantle, for those who sense God is preparing them to speak with authority. Find it in the first pinned comment below, available for a limited time only. Now let that land for a moment, because what comes next is where the real work begins. You have been told, by well-meaning people, by culture, by your own wounded logic, that if it hasn't happened yet, maybe it isn't supposed to. Maybe you misread it. Maybe you imagined the connection, and so you have spent seasons trying to talk yourself out of something God never told you to release. You have intellectualized a spiritual reality, trying to make peace with a silence you were never meant to simply accept. And that internal conflict, that tension between what you feel and what you've been told to feel, has been slowly eroding your confidence in your own discernment. There is an insidious kind of damage that happens when you are repeatedly told to distrust your own spiritual perception. Because discernment is not a luxury for the spiritually gifted few, it is a fundamental inheritance of every son and daughter of God. 1 Corinthians 12 doesn't list discernment as the property of an elite class. It lists it as one of the gifts of the Spirit, distributed as the Spirit determines, placed within human vessels who are called to steward it carefully. And when you are told, again and again, that what you are sensing is not real, that the knowing you carry is merely emotion, merely longing, merely wishful thinking, something in your spiritual architecture begins to fracture. You stop trusting the very instrument God placed inside you to navigate the invisible realm, and that is a profound loss. Not just in relation to this person, but in every area of your life where God needs you to hear clearly and move boldly. The recovery of your discernment begins right here. It begins with the simple but courageous acknowledgement that what you have felt about this person may not be delusion. It may be revelation, and there is a difference between a revelation that requires patient stewardship and a revelation that permits passive waiting. This is where it gets nuanced. This is where most people oversimplify and end up in error in one of two directions, either forcing movement that isn't theirs to force, or remaining so still that they become spiritually stagnant while calling it faith. But here's where it goes deeper. The problem isn't that you heard wrong. The problem is that you've been trying to move in human timing what God designed to move in divine timing. And those are two completely different speeds. Abraham didn't misread the promise when Isaac didn't arrive immediately. He misread the timeline, and in his impatience, he produced an Ishmael, something that looked like the answer, something that felt close enough, but carried consequences he never anticipated. How many times have you almost settled for your Ishmael? How many times have you nearly released the real thing to make room for something easier, something more available, something less painful to want? Think about what Ishmael represents in the architecture of your own story. Ishmael is not evil. Ishmael is not sin. Ishmael is a sincere attempt by a human heart to help God keep his word. And that is precisely what makes it so dangerous, because the Ishmaels in your life don't arrive wearing warning signs. They arrive wearing the appearance of reasonableness. They arrive when you are tired of waiting and someone kind and available steps into your peripheral vision. They arrive when you have almost convinced yourself that maybe the connection you were holding on to was just projection. And here is something tangible, something immediate, something that requires no faith to touch. And so you reach for it, not out of rebellion, out of exhaustion. And God, in his mercy, doesn't destroy you for it. But he does allow you to feel the weight of what it costs to carry a counterfeit when you were designed for the real. How many people are right now in relationships that began as Ishmael moments, decisions made in the gap between the promise and the fulfillment? How many are lying next to someone they chose in a season of doubt, wondering in the quiet of their hearts whether they released their Isaac before he ever had a chance to arrive? This is not a message of condemnation. This is a message of awakening. Because some of you reading this are not yet in that Ishmael moment. You are standing right at the edge of it. You are one more season of silence away from reaching for something that will ease the pain in the short term and complicate the promise in the long term. And this word is finding you right now, in this exact moment, because heaven is asking you to hold on just a little longer. Because here's the truth about divine connections. They are almost never convenient. They arrive in incomplete seasons. They surface when you aren't ready. They stir something in you before the circumstances align to support what you're feeling. And that gap, the space between the stirring and the manifestation, is where most people abandon what God is building. Not because they stopped believing in God, but because they stopped believing they were worth the full version of what He promised. That second part deserves to be said again, slowly, because it is the root of almost everything. People don't abandon divine promises primarily because they lose faith in God's ability. They abandon them because they quietly lose faith in their own worthiness to receive. There is a theological understanding that God is powerful enough to accomplish anything. And then there is the lived experience of wondering whether His best is really for someone like you. And those two things can coexist in the same heart, sometimes for years, without ever being honestly examined. You confess that God is able, but somewhere beneath that confession is a whisper that says, He may be able, but perhaps not willing. Not for me specifically. Perhaps there is something about my history, my failures, my complicated story, that places me just slightly outside the circle of people who receive the fullness of the promise. And that whisper, quiet and persistent, is the one that has been doing the most damage. And this leads us to something most people miss entirely. The delay around this person is not a denial, but it might be a mirror, because God doesn't just use connections to bless you, He uses them to develop you. And sometimes the reason you cannot yet step into that union is not because the other person isn't ready. It's because there are chambers in you that haven't been unlocked yet. There are fears you haven't faced. There are patterns of relating, learned in childhood, reinforced through disappointment, that would quietly sabotage the very thing you're praying to receive. God isn't withholding this person to punish you. He is preparing you so that when it arrives, you have the capacity to hold it. Consider what it means to carry something you aren't yet structured to hold. Water poured into a broken vessel doesn't stay. It seeps through the cracks, and eventually you find yourself empty again, wondering why the blessing didn't last. God, in His kindness, does not pour water into containers that cannot hold it. Not because He is withholding the water, but because He understands that the devastation of losing it again would be greater than the temporary discomfort of waiting while the vessel is repaired. This season of preparation is not punishment. It is craftsmanship. God is a builder who does not rush the foundation. And the longer He is working on your foundation, the taller the structure He intends to build upon it. There are specific chambers that need to be addressed. There is the chamber of unprocessed grief, the losses you never fully mourned that have taught your nervous system to brace itself against joy, because every time something good appeared, it eventually disappeared. There is the chamber of performance, the belief that love must be earned through consistent excellence, that rest from striving will result in abandonment. There is the chamber of self-protection, the invisible armor you wore so long that you forgot it was armor and began to think it was simply skin. Each of these chambers has a specific key, and God, in His surgical precision, is working through this season to hand you each key in turn. The delay is not delay, it is divine surgery, and surgery by nature requires stillness. Stay with me, because what's coming next is the part that breaks the cycle. Think about Ruth and Boaz. The moment most people focus on is the harvest field, the divine encounter, the favor, the beautiful unfolding of redemption. But before any of that, Ruth had to make a choice that cost her everything. She had to release a familiar grief, leave a known land, and walk toward a future she couldn't see clearly. She didn't wait for Boaz to appear before she moved. She moved, and Boaz appeared as a result of her movement. There is something in that sequence that God is speaking directly to your situation right now. Because you have been waiting for the person to move first. You have been waiting for circumstances to shift before you shift. But sometimes the divine invitation is this: take one faithful step in the direction of your healing, your wholeness, your growth, and watch what heaven repositions in response. Ruth's story carries a weight that is easy to romanticize and hard to truly absorb. Because Ruth didn't just make a courageous statement on the road to Bethlehem, she then had to live inside the silence of that courage for an extended period before she saw any evidence that it had been the right decision. She gleaned in fields that were not hers. She gathered leftover grain, the scraps that other harvesters had dropped. And she did it day after day with a faithfulness and a dignity that had no immediate reward. She did not perform her obedience for an audience. She was not waiting for someone to recognize how hard she was working and reward her publicly. She simply moved. She simply did the next thing. She simply showed up in her assigned field and trusted that if God was in this, the fullness of it would manifest in his timing. And Boaz, when he finally noticed her, did not notice her because she had been strategically positioning herself. He noticed her because someone who had been watching her faithfulness in obscurity gave him a report. Her character preceded her. Her consistency created a reputation before she ever had a conversation. And when Boaz extended favor, it was not because she had caught his attention through clever maneuvering. It was because her movement in the direction of her assignment had made her visible to the right person at the right moment. This is the principle heaven is offering you right now. Stop waiting for the person. Start moving toward your wholeness. And trust that as you become who God is calling you to be, you will become visible to what God is calling toward you. But let me challenge you with something, because this is the part no one wants to hear. Some of you have not been waiting in faith. You have been waiting in control. There is a difference between trusting God with someone and quietly managing the situation from a distance, keeping your presence felt, keeping the door open just enough, holding on to threads disguised as hope, and God sees the difference even when you don't. Real surrender doesn't negotiate. Real surrender doesn't keep checking in to make sure the thing is still where you left it. Real surrender says, I trust you enough to fully release this, not because I've stopped caring, but because I believe you are more capable of writing this story than I am. Control, in the context of spiritual waiting, is one of the most sophisticated and least examined forms of unbelief, because it doesn't look like unbelief. It looks like dedication. It looks like persistence. It looks like love. You tell yourself that you are holding on because you know what you heard from God, and you are not going to let go of it no matter how long it takes. But there is a subtle and important question that needs to be asked in that moment. Are you holding on to the promise, or are you holding on to the outcome? Because God asks us to hold on to the promise. He does not ask us to grip the outcome so tightly that we begin to manage the details of how it arrives. When Abraham held on to the promise of Isaac, God honored that. When Abraham tried to manage the timeline by going to Hagar, the result was 2,000 years of conflict. The promise was not wrong. The management was. Examine honestly, right now, what your version of management looks like. Maybe it looks like keeping a particular social media account where you can see their activity. Maybe it looks like engineering proximity, showing up in places where you know they will be, under the guise of simply living your life. Maybe it looks like holding back your own growth in ways that keep you emotionally available and clearly unattached, so that when they are ready, you will be right there. Maybe it looks like the slow, consistent prayer that sounds like surrender, but is actually a negotiation. God, bring them back, and I will do this. I will become this. That is not surrender. That is a contract. And God is not in the business of being contracted with. He is in the business of being trusted, fully, completely, without conditions attached to the release. And once that clicks, everything shifts. Because the moment you stop managing and start trusting, something extraordinary happens in the spiritual atmosphere around that connection. When you release control, you release resistance. And it is resistance, not distance, not timing, not even the other person's choices, that has been creating the greatest obstruction. You cannot pull someone into divine alignment. You can only align yourself and trust that God knows how to draw the right people toward the right version of you. This is not a passive statement. Alignment is active work. Aligning yourself means doing the healing you've been postponing. It means going to the counselor you've been avoiding. It means having the honest conversation with God that you've been softening with religious language. It means sitting with the grief you have been too busy to feel. It means releasing the version of yourself that has organized its entire identity around this longing, and discovering who you are when the longing is no longer the loudest thing in the room. Alignment is the hardest kind of work precisely because it is invisible. No one sees it happening, no one applauds it. And yet it is the work that shifts everything. Because when you are truly aligned, when the interior of your life reflects the promises you are standing on, something in the spiritual atmosphere responds. Doors that were sealed begin to loosen. People who were positioned at a distance begin to turn toward you. Circumstances that seemed unmovable begin to shift, not because you pushed them, but because your alignment created a current that moved them. In just a moment, we'll uncover what's been hidden in plain sight, the one thing you haven't fully surrendered, and why it's the key to everything you've been waiting for. But first, this has to land. Because there is a version of you that has been so focused on this person that you have slowly stopped becoming. You have put chapters of your own development on hold. You have paused dreams, delayed decisions, shrunk your world, not intentionally, but quietly. Because somewhere in your heart, you decided you would rather wait together than grow alone. And that posture, as loving as it feels, is actually a form of spiritual stagnation. God does not call you to pause your becoming for anyone. He calls you to become so fully, so completely, so uncompromisingly yourself that when the appointed person arrives, they recognize in you someone who has already met God in the deep places, someone who has already wrestled and won, someone who doesn't need to be completed, but who is ready to be joined. The pausing is subtle. It rarely announces itself. You don't wake up one morning and consciously decide to stop growing. It happens in the accumulation of small decisions. The opportunity you didn't pursue because it would have required your full attention and you didn't want to close a door. The friendship you kept at a shallow level because building depth felt like a commitment to a future that might look different than the one you were imagining. The creative project you started and then set aside because inspiration requires presence, and you were only half present, the other half perpetually reserved for someone who may or may not be coming. You shrank, not all at once, but incrementally, consistently, quietly, in ways that now, when you look back, you can trace like a map of all the places you retreated from. And here is what God is saying in this moment. That version of you, the one waiting on the edges of your own life, is not who this person is being prepared to meet. The Boaz in your story is not being prepared to meet someone who has been standing still. He is being prepared to meet someone who has been walking, someone who has moved in the direction of purpose and healing, who carries the aroma of a person who has lived rather than merely waited. The Jacob who received the blessing was not the Jacob who ran from the encounter. The Jacob who received the new name was the one who wrestled through the night until the dawn broke. And you are being invited to wrestle. Not with the person, not with the timing, but with every internal resistance that has been keeping you from the fullest expression of who God created you to be. This is where the real transformation begins. There is something that has been hiding underneath all of this that you haven't wanted to name. And naming it is the most important thing you will do today, because underneath the longing, underneath the prayer, underneath the warfare, there is a wound, a specific wound, not a generic one. A wound that says, I am not the kind of person that someone like this would fully choose. That wound didn't come from nowhere. It came from a moment, or a series of moments, when someone you trusted made you feel unchosen, made you feel like you were almost enough but not quite. And that wound has been sitting quietly underneath every prayer you've prayed about this person, subtly shaping your posture, quietly whispering that God's best is for other people, that you will always be close to the promise, but never quite inside it. Try to locate that moment, if you can, not to revisit it with pain, but to identify it with clarity. Because unnamed wounds do not heal, they simply migrate. They move from relationship to relationship, from season to season, disguising themselves in new contexts while carrying the same ancient message. And the message is always some variation of the same lie. You are the one people leave. You are the one people choose second. You are the one who gives more than you receive. You are the one who loves deeply and is loved cautiously in return. And you have carried that message for so long that it has become part of your operating system. You have built entire relational strategies around it, ways of presenting yourself that minimize the risk of it being confirmed, while simultaneously ensuring that the behaviors you exhibit in relationships actually recreate the exact dynamic that confirms it. This is not a character flaw. This is the mechanics of a wound. And wounds respond to treatment, not to willpower. The most courageous thing you will do today is not the declaration. The most courageous thing you will do today is name the wound, speak it into the light. Call it what it is, not with shame, not with drama, but with the quiet, steady clarity of someone who has decided they are done letting an unnamed thing run their life from the basement. Because light is not dramatic. Light is simply light. And when you bring something into the light, it loses the power it had in the darkness. And here is the part you probably didn't expect. The thing that has been blocking this connection isn't the enemy. It isn't your past. It isn't even the other person's free will. It is an identity agreement you made in a moment of pain. A declaration not spoken aloud but deeply believed, that said you are someone who almost receives love, but never fully. And until that agreement is broken, until you stand before God and say, I refuse to carry that label any longer, you will keep recreating the conditions that confirm it. Not because God is allowing it, but because broken identity produces broken patterns, and broken patterns reproduce the exact situations that appear to prove the lie true. An identity agreement is one of the most powerful forces in human experience precisely because it is invisible and self-referential. It operates below the level of conscious decision-making. You don't choose in a given moment to confirm the belief that you are someone who almost receives love. You simply respond to circumstances in ways that are perfectly consistent with that belief, and the circumstances obligingly provides you with confirmation. Someone pulls back, and the agreement says, "See? Told you." Someone goes quiet, and the agreement says, "Of course they did." Someone chooses another, and the agreement says, "This is the pattern. This is who you are. This is what your love always produces." And the tragedy is that you can be a person of deep faith, genuine prayer, and real spiritual sensitivity, and still be operating out of a broken identity agreement. Because the agreement lives beneath the level where most spiritual conversations go. This is why the enemy works at the level of identity. He doesn't primarily attack your behavior. He attacks your sense of who you are. Because if he can get you to believe a distorted version of your identity, your behavior will follow naturally, without him having to intervene in each individual decision. He simply plants the seed, waters it with a few painful experiences, and then steps back and watches it grow. And you, trying to manage your life at the level of circumstances and choices, never quite reach down deep enough to address the root. This is the cycle God is asking you to end today. Not tomorrow, not when the person comes back, not when the circumstances improve. Today, right now, in this moment. The invitation to end a cycle in a single moment is not naive. It doesn't mean that all the healing happens instantly. It means that the decision, the moment of consent to a new identity, is a real and powerful thing, and it happens in a moment. The healing that follows that decision is a process, but the decision itself is a threshold, and God is standing at that threshold right now, not urging, not demanding, but inviting, with the same patient, expectant love that has been there through every painful confirmation of the lie, waiting for the moment when you would be ready to choose differently. Because you were not created to almost be chosen. You were created to be fully, completely, covenantally loved by God first and by the right person in His time. And that is not a consolation. That is a promise. And promises from heaven don't expire. They don't diminish. They don't get given to someone else while you weren't looking. They wait for you to become the person who can finally receive them without flinching. There is a beautiful and overlooked truth in the way God treats promises. He doesn't reassign them to someone more prepared while you are still in process. He doesn't look at your timeline and decide you've taken too long. and offer your portion to someone else who moved faster. His faithfulness is not contingent on your pace. His commitment to the promise he made over your life does not waver because the fulfillment is taking longer than expected. What he requires is not speed. What he requires is direction. Are you moving toward him? Are you moving toward wholeness? Are you moving toward the person he is calling you to become? If the answer is yes, even imperfectly, even slowly, even with setbacks, then the promise is intact, and the fulfillment is not lost. It is simply being held in the hands of the one who knows exactly when the moment is right. Place your hand on your heart right now and declare this with me. I break every agreement I have made with rejection. I release the belief that I am someone who almost receives love. I release the pattern of managing what I should be trusting. I release the fear that this promise belongs to someone else. I declare that I am seen by God, chosen by God, and prepared by God for the fullness of what He has promised. I will not shrink. I will not pause my becoming. I will not rehearse my unworthiness in the presence of a God who calls me worthy. I trust His timing. I trust His plan. I trust that this person, this connection, this covenant, if it is from Him, cannot be lost, and if it is from Him, it will find me in the fullness of who I am becoming. I step forward. I step whole. I step free. Let that declaration settle into the places in you that have been waiting to hear it. Let it reach past the surface and into the chambers that have been locked. Because words spoken in faith, in the presence of God, with the full weight of belief behind them, those words carry creative power. The same God who spoke light into existence speaks through your declarations when they are aligned with His character and His promises. This is not positive thinking. This is covenant language. This is a son or daughter of God standing before their Father and saying, I receive what you said about me. I receive the fullness of what you prepared for me. I lay down the agreement that said I was less, and I pick up the truth that says I am chosen, covered, and called. And if this declaration stirred something uncomfortable in you, if you found resistance rising as you tried to say it, that resistance is information. It is showing you exactly where the agreement is lodged. It is pointing to the specific belief that needs the most direct attention. Do not bypass the resistance. Sit with it. Ask God to show you the moment when that agreement was made. Ask Him to bring His truth to that specific place. Not in generalities, but surgically and specifically, the way only He can, because He was there when it happened, and He has never agreed with the lie you believed in that moment. If this message reached something real in you today, do not let it pass without acting on it. Leave a comment below and tell me what broke open. Share this with one person who is carrying this same silent war. And if you are ready to go deeper into understanding your divine assignment, your spiritual identity, and the patterns God is breaking in this season, the link is in the first pinned comment. You were not meant to walk this alone.